Hi everybody, it's Tom Woods coming to you all the way from the United States, and I am delighted to hear that you are celebrating the life and legacy of Murray Rothbard, who to my mind was the most important libertarian intellectual of all time. And that's for many reasons. His contributions are varied and very great in number. I had an opportunity to get to know Rothbard a bit toward the end of his life, and I consider that one of the many fortunate aspects of my own life. Rothbard was really an expert in a variety of areas, and in fact, what he did in creating libertarianism and creating really the movement that we associate with libertarianism is he brought together the science of Austrian economics with the study of liberty, the study of the non-aggression principle, and its implications. He put these together and created a single science of liberty, in effect. Now, granted, he will acknowledge that Austrian economics stands on its own and is value-free. It does not render value judgments, but he would say that the insights of Austrian economics are an indispensable adjunct of the overall science of liberty. But Rothbard was also a historian, and as a historian myself, I can particularly appreciate his contributions. Perhaps his greatest contribution was his study of the Great Depression in the United States. And he challenged the conventional wisdom with regard to the Great Depression. Some people had argued that the Depression had occurred because of income inequality, and consumers were not spending enough money, that sort of explanation. And he showed that that clearly could not be the case for a variety of reasons. The evidence did not sustain that explanation at all, given that the Depression hit much harder in the capital goods industries than in the consumer goods industries, for example. Consumers don't buy heavy machinery. So if the problem was consumers weren't spending enough, why wasn't it consumer goods that were hit the hardest? So this explanation is obviously phony. But then there was an alleged free market explanation, that of the Chicago School, that blamed the Depression basically on an inadequate policy response by the Federal Reserve. But this also seemed odd to Rothbard. How could that be a free market explanation of the crisis, given that this explanation requires the Federal Reserve, an institution created by the U.S. government to intervene in order to fend off economic depressions? No, Rothbard's was an entirely free market explanation that relied on the Austrian theory of the business cycle that you can read about at your leisure. So Rothbard did that in his great work, America's Great Depression. He wrote a 4-volume history of colonial America that is encyclopedic. He wrote an unfinished collection, was intended to be a 3-volume set on the history of economic thought. He managed to complete only 2 volumes before his death, and so on and so forth. He was an expert on American business cycles in general. He was interested in American cultural history, religious history. He could speak with quite a bit of knowledge in a variety of areas. He was a political philosopher. He took the idea of the non-aggression principle, the central idea of libertarianism, that one should not commit aggression against peaceful people. And he extended this across a variety of questions. How would the non-aggression principle apply here or there? In all manner of areas of life, he looked to see how the non-aggression principle could be applied, even in difficult cases. What would the libertarian have to say about a wide variety of difficult cases? He was approached by a major American publisher to write what later became the book For a New Liberty, the Libertarian Manifesto. Rothbard wrote this, as I say, at the invitation of a major American publisher that was taking interest in libertarianism because they believed that it was going to be something big in the United States, and Rothbard seemed to be the person to write it. And again, he took the non-aggression principle and he applied it to case after case after case in that book. But Rothbard was, of course, first and foremost an economist, and it's been argued that his great treatise, Man, Economy, and State, a treatise on economic principles that was published in 1962, really kept the Austrian school alive during a time when it very easily could have faded away entirely. And when in 1974, a great many Austrian economists, well, great many by 1970 standards anyway, met at the famous South Royalton Conference in Vermont, it was all people who had been influenced by or had read Rothbard's book, Man, Economy, and State. It was that generation that held the Austrian school's torch aloft that met for that conference. So Rothbard really kept the light shining for the Austrian school with his tremendous contribution, which was highly praised by Ludwig von Mises himself. Rothbard is just an endless treasure of insights and of delights of various kinds. You will love reading him, from his highly scientific work, Man, Economy, and State, to his more popular writings that you'll find in a variety of other works. You will fall in love with Rothbard. You will learn a tremendous amount about him. And as I say, I could not be happier to learn that Rothbard's life is being celebrated halfway around the world from where he lived his own life. So congratulations on your decision to honor Rothbard, and you have ahead of you a lifetime of intellectual pleasure awaiting you.